is not going to start his own television station or newspaper because he doesn't have the $100 million that you need to even get it off the ground. So we're reduced to meetings like this, which are very good. And we also, God apparently was merciful on us, and he gave us the internet. In fact, in the States, we had this total monopoly of television by 3 television networks, which were all controlled by Zionists. And so along came cable, and suddenly we had all new stations and all sorts of controversial programs coming on, which of course the 3 Zionist networks would not touch with a 10-foot pole. And the result was they were left behind. They had 100% of the television audience. They now have 30%, and it's dropping every year. In fact, it's probably less than 30%, but they're cooking the books in order to maintain their advertising revenues to give a totally false picture of their audience, which is probably less than half of what they claim, because that's how they keep up their television revenues, based on audience share. So this is all a banker's operation, and I was telling you about the fact that the bankers met in Jekyll Island in 1910. And who was the chairman of this meeting? The chairman of this secret meeting was Senator Nelson Aldrich, the Republican majority leader of the Senate. And of course the Republican Party was in full power at that time, because after the Civil War, the corporations and banks moved in and took over everything. And they made money so fast that they didn't know what to do with it. And they owned all the railroads and the corporations, and the profits rolled in. And in fact, they were making so much money that they decided, look, we've got to protect our gains. We don't want any competition. So these corporations passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which said you cannot compete with the big corporations. Now, they sold this to Congress. They said, look, we want to have free competition. We don't want any restraint of trade. So we're going to pass the Antitrust Act so there will be no more big trusts in the United States. Everything will be open to everybody. Anybody could start a company and do whatever they want. But actually, the Sherman Antitrust Act in operation has always been to stifle competition. That these upstart companies, like Bill Gates comes along with Microsoft, and that's why the Justice Department went after him, because this was the true spirit of antitrust, was for the Justice Department to crush Bill Gates, and the lawsuit was brought by his own competitors. They said, Bill Gates has too much of the business, so that's a sin. And of course the Justice Department is against sin, so they went after Bill Gates. And even though he was the richest man in the world, when the Justice Department went after him, because they could fold him up like a collapsing door because they have so much power, and the Sherman Antitrust Act and all that stuff. But what they were trying to do was send Bill Gates a message: you're now the richest man in the world, and you're spending $1.5 million a year in Washington? This is ridiculous. So he got the message, and he's now spending about $50 million a year. And because the criminals, they want you to share. If you're making a lot of money, they want you to share it with them. Just be nice. Don't be selfish. And so that's the whole story of the Justice Department. They want you to be nice. And they do it through taxation, and they do it through government force if that's necessary, and that's what they did. So this is the whole system which was set up in 1694 in England. And what happened was in 1688, England had what they called the Glorious Revolution. And this is part of English history, the Glorious Revolution. What was the Glorious Revolution? The Amsterdam bankers, who at that time were the richest people in the world, they controlled most of banking in the world, they were very unhappy with King James II of England. They were afraid that his daughter, who had married a Catholic, they were going to have a Catholic king of England, and they didn't want this. So, because they didn't want... See, Henry VIII had rebelled against the Catholics and taken away all their lands and created a whole new dukedom, which of the people he gave the Catholic lands to. So England had been Protestant after that time. So James II, they thought, my gosh, he's going to go back to a Catholic. So the Amsterdam bankers decided, they had a minor prince in the Netherlands called William. So they decided to finance William, who had a claim to the English throne, a very small claim. They would finance him to invade England and take it over. Well, the problem was William did not have many troops or many ships. He had by no means any amount of military force which he could take over England. So they did it the easy way. They bribed all of King James's admirals and generals to sell him out. And when King William's little flotilla appeared off the coast of England, all of King James's generals and admirals defected to William. So he almost won England without firing a shot. And the purpose of all this was they wanted to set up a central bank in England. So King William set up the Bank of England in 1694. And up to that time, England had, about every 50 years, they'd have a revolution or a war. After the Bank of England was set up, there has never been a revolution in England. Because for a revolution, you need some money. And once the Bank of England took over the finances of the British Empire, nobody ever had any money to object to anything. And so England has enjoyed tranquility for 300 years. It's that simple. Control the money and you control the people. So the bankers realized they needed intelligence. So they set up the first and best intelligence operation in the world called the British Secret Information Service, SIS. And the purpose of the SIS was not merely to gather intelligence, but also to control the opposition. So if there was any opposition, these intelligence operators would infiltrate it and take it over. This is laid out by a Chinese general named Sun Tzu, who said, always control the opposition. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be the Thursday morning garden club or whatever, but you send agents in and you control it. And in fact, I was very active in right-wing organizations all through the 50s and 60s. And we could always tell a government informant because he would come in and make the biggest donation. And then he would say, look, you guys are not doing anything. Let's get something going here. Let's blow up a building. I'll get the dynamite. It won't cost you a penny. We'll take care of everything. And these guys would say, hey, this is good. We'll really get something going. So they'd blow up a building, and then they'd all go to prison for life. Because they would have so much testimony against them. When they went to court, they didn't have a chance. And of course, their lawyers would never plead entrapment or anything like that. And so these guys were on the fast track to 30 years in prison. And this is controlling the opposition, and that's how it's done. So the result is there's very little opposition because it's all infiltrated. And you can always tell the government informant because he is the real activist. And he is the one that brings in the money. If you can't pay the rent on the hall, he pays the rent. You know, this guy is a real patriot, you know. So, so I saw this from the inside for over 30 years. But my work was mostly intellectual, so I wasn't too involved in any of this. But I did make a speech in Coeur d'Alene and Idaho. And I said, I know you Idaho people are great hunters. And I said, you like to hunt bighorn sheep and you like to hunt cougars and so forth. But I said, I think you're missing a bet. I said, I think that the most thrilling sport of all is hunting federal agents. Well, 2 days later, the Murrah building blows up. And I never heard a word from anybody to this day. But the Spokane paper did a front page story on me and what I had said, you know. And I thought, well, by gosh, now they're going to say that I blew up the Murrah building. Well, nobody to this day ever said anything. And I was quoted in the New York Times as saying it's a standard government operation, which of course it was. And I had a friend named Red Beckman in Montana. He was quoted on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that this was a standard government operation, which of course it was, because I know the whole patriot movement in the United States, and I have never met anybody who would want to blow up the Murrah building. I mean, to them, it would be totally counterproductive. Now, if they really wanted to blow up something, they would blow up something in Washington, but they didn't. They went to Heartland America out in Oklahoma, where none of the bureau